Good day, and welcome to another episode of Presentation Hal. Today we have a very special guest. I personally am very excited about this to welcome Jeff Pearlman, who is an acclaimed sports writer. He's written 8 books, and one of them has become a show. He's written two of which are New York Times bestsellers. The Boys Will Be Boys, about the Dallas Cowboys in the 1990s, and the other New York Times bestseller, Showtime, Magic Kareem and the Los Angeles Lakers Dynasty. That book was turned into a show that maybe you've seen on HBO, Winning Time, about the Los Angeles Lakers. So, Jeff, thanks for coming.
I feel like you tell everyone it's they're a very special guest. So, like, am I a very special guest or a very special,
Well,
special
I,
guest?
I was kind of psyched when I met you last week because I do love the show Winning Time. So when you said that you had written the book that was based on, like I love that story. I love the story about Dr. Buss. Was that his name? The
Mhm.
just the way he just went all out and went for broke, and took this team that was losing money and losing, and he put a ton of money into it and could have easily gone bankrupt at any given minute, risked everything, and built a winning team. And as an entrepreneur, that always I don't think a lot of people realize how often people who have made a lot of money have been so close to broke or even gone bankrupt. I think Walt Disney went bankrupt like 13 times before he came up with Mickey Mouse.
Well,
Like the
I'm the dad. I'm the dad. I'm the son of a an entrepreneur. My father, Stan Pearlman, ran for years his own executive search firm, and he had one company that lasted 6 years and another one that lasted for a couple of decades. And I was always inspired by kind of the entrepreneurial spirit. And Jerry Buss was he was a chemical engineer from Wyoming
yeah.
who happened to make a lot of money in real estate and decided, back at a time when the NBA was not profitable, when a
Hmm.
lot of people chalked it up grotesquely as, quote, too black, too, quote, ghetto, too, quote, urban, saw some real joy in the NBA, loved the NBA, and thought, I can do something with this, and basically took his money and put all the chips on that league. And we see where the NBA is today. And a lot of that's because of Jerry Buss's sort of risk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a great American story.
Mhm.
That is like America at its best, rags to riches. Um, you also were you wrote that infamous story about John Rocker, famous
That is true.
baseball player, beloved by everybody. You spent a day with him as a young writer and realized he was kind of I think it would be a euphemism to say he was a bigot. He was kind of a jerk. He probably had something disparaging to say about every race, gender, religion in some awful way. He even, spit into a toll booth because it wasn't working. So he spit at it like, ew. You want to give us a little bit of background about that?
Well, I was 27 and I was a baseball writer at Sports Illustrated. And at the time, John Rocker was a pitcher for the Atlanta Braves, and he was having a great season. And I'd written a profile earlier about him where I didn't get that much time with him, but it never ran. So my editors asked during the off season if you would go down to Georgia and spend time with him, and I spent 8 hours with him. And it was basically 8 hours of listening to this guy spew. And I mean, it wasn't not all 8 hours were him being a bigot, but a lot of it, he didn't called a black teammate a fat monkey, bashed, quote unquote queers on the train in New York City and queers with AIDS and hates foreigners. Why don't they learn to speak English and why are they even in this country? And, I just, we talked about this. Like, as a reporter, your job, you're not part of the story, you're chronicling the story. So for me, I'm a liberal Jewish guy from New York, right? Like, I'm not his target audience,
Right.
but it's not my job as a reporter to sit there and argue with someone I'm writing about. My job is to understand who they are and try to get insights into who they are and sort of understand their world. And when someone offers that to you and he doesn't have a filter and he just goes off, you listen. You don't
Right.
argue, you don't debate, you listen. And that's what I did
Right.
for 8 very long hours.
Well, your job is to listen and observe and then report back and tell the story objectively.
Yeah, I
And
just think, and it's funny because, like, it wasn't a very remarkable thing to do. The story's not even that great, but I think as time passes, we've become social media has turned this into much more of a me culture.
yeah.
Myself included. I tweet about things I do and whatever, and we're me. Look at me. Look at this video I took. Look at this concert I was at. Look at this award I won. All that stuff, top soup to nuts, top to bottom. Look, here I am with Miley Cyrus. Click. I'm going to put that. And when I was coming up as a journalist, and I still maintain this, like, you're not supposed to be part of the story. You're the storyteller. You're showing people. You're painting a picture for people. You're not supposed to be painting it about yourself. And that has become a little bit more of a foreign idea. But back in '99, when I wrote that story, there was no other way to do it. That's what you were supposed to do.
Right. And the interesting now is, especially like cable news, is it really reporting, or am I getting somebody's opinion? And it's always about the journalist. It's always about the broadcaster. It's very me, and nobody's really getting objective news anymore, or it's very hard to find.
Well, people ask, like, where did we go wrong in this regard? And I can tell you, I know for a fact where we went wrong. We went wrong when CNN came along and introduced the idea of a 24-hour news network. And at the time, it seemed like a great idea. But what networks discovered, again, I work in media, so I see this all the time. What they discovered is, number one, there's only so much news to fill 24 hours. So what do we do when we're not doing news? We'll do opinion. Oh, people actually like hearing opinion more than they like hearing the news. Oh, people like having their own opinions reaffirmed. So all of a sudden, instead of me listening to a reporter talk about what's going on in Ukraine, I'm listening to a Sean Hannity or Rachel Maddow or whoever reaffirm my beliefs. And all of a sudden, I'm just going to the channel that tells me exactly what I want to hear. So it's a disaster. It's really a disaster because we're just fed the same stuff we already know. It sucks.
What really bothers me about that are the Rachel Maddows and the Sean Hannitys of the world. They have a lot of opinions, tons of opinions. I don't think they've ever run a business. I don't think they've ever worked for or ran a government agency. I don't think they've been on their local government or ran for office or even on the local PTA or anything. So how much do you really know by sitting in a 10 by 10 room with a bunch of lights on you and a microphone? Like, how much?
I will say, in Rachel Maddow's defense, she actually was at the ground floor when Air in America was starting the radio station and was heavily involved in the formation of that. So at least she was there at the start of a business. But I do.
Okay.
That's the thing. Like, it's easy to spew opinions and yell and get it. Like, it's easy for Tucker Carlson to spew about blah, 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 blah. But, like, okay, so what are you doing about it? You're angry about this? Are you running for office? Are you on the ground floor doing things? Or are you just stirring up anger in other people?
Getting ratings.
Well, that's what it's all about. That's what it's all entirely about is ratings, 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 clicks, clicks, clicks. So our advertisers have more money and blah, blah. It's grotesque. It really is grotesque.
Yeah. And so this is a presentation podcast, and we're sitting here talking about journalism. But the parallel for our listeners that I want to point out is a good journalist makes the story about their topic. It's all about them. And when you have to give a presentation, make it focus on your topic, your subject matter, your story. Take the onus. It's not about you. When you are presenting information, whether it's a story, it's a service, it's a product, it's about that. And by focusing on your topic and not about you personally, is an excellent way to deal with anxiety, because you've just you take the attention off yourself, you put it on your topic, and then you can speak better because it's a way to relieve nerves.
Also, don't you think, like, when it comes to presenting and public speaking, there's this thin line between being engaging and being a douchebag, where, like, nobody wants to hear some like, when someone is humble bragging. We all know when someone is humble bragging, and nobody wants to hear some guy humble bragging about all his achievements. And we're just supposed to clap, but we have to clap because we're at this presentation. I just think, like, a few things you learn in journalism that I actually think apply to public speaking and presenting is, number one, it's all about the little details. So, like, when you're telling a story, I always say to I teach journalism, sports writing out here at Chapman University, just as an adjunct. And I always say, it's not just a drink. You weren't just having a drink. You were having a Diet Coke, and it was flat, and it was in a plastic bottle, and you got it at the bottom shelf of a 7-Eleven, and when you open it, you didn't hear psh, you just heard put. And, like, little details add to a story so much, right? So you always think about what are the details. When you're writing an article, same exact thing. He wasn't just eating a hamburger. He was eating a hamburger from Burger King, and the bun was soggy and blah, blah. Those little things make to a story. And number two is, like, put the focus on whatever you're talking about. Don't make it about you. It's not about you. You can incorporate yourself into a story if it works, but it shouldn't be about you. I think everyone thinks they're the most interesting person in the room. And if we all think we're the most interesting person in the room, none of us are the most interesting person in the room. So what I like about journalism is you get to focus on others. And the other thing is like, I think it's important to be as sort of engaged with your audience as possible, because my dad always said, he always said that he would say to me, what is the number one topic people like talking about? And I take my guesses, and he'd say, no, themselves. That's what people like the most.
Yeah.
So the more you can engage people and have them actually share their experiences, the more you win over a crowd, in my opinion.
So you're saying you're giving a presentation. Well, actually, the conference where I met you, you engaged the audience. You pulled people out of the audience, and you made them part of your presentation.
I made you part of the presentation.
Maybe, I know.
Yeah. But it's fun that way. It's also fun. And like,
it was really fun.
If you see, and I don't do this, like, it's not, there's no, like, I'm not trying to, there's no gimmick here, but like, I remember at the conference I spoke at, there was a guy wearing the band Chicago shirt. And the whole show, I wanted to ask him about Chicago. Like, you just like, or if someone has a cool tattoo, there's another thing I tell my students, someone has a cool tattoo, ask them about their tattoo. There's a reason they have a cool tattoo. You know, ask someone about the hat they're wearing. If I say, all right, like at this conference I mentioned that I went to the University of Delaware, and someone in the front row said, Blue Hens, that's the team nickname, Blue Hens. Well, there's an immediate connection. Oh, you went to Delaware? I went to Delaware too. And even if it's an aside on your little talk, it's like a cool little human moment, and it humanizes you and it humanizes the audience. You know, win-win.
Right. That's also a great that's a great tactic to kind of overcome shyness. You know, if you have social anxiety and you don't know what to say, compliment the person. Everybody wants to hear something nice about themselves. Just like you said, your hair looks great, nice hat, Chicago t-shirt. Where'd you get the tattoo? What's the meaning of that? You ask a question, and it's the same idea. You're taking the attention off yourself.
Totally. And my wife always says, she says, when we have guests coming over, she always says, don't interview the guests. Like, just don't interview, because I'm always interviewing. And the truth of the matter is a lot of that is because I'd rather ask questions and than be asked myself. Like, I prefer to engage someone else instead of having to talk. So it's certainly a level, it's an attempt at sort of deflection a little bit. And you can definitely do that. Like public speaking is not, I enjoy it, I guess, but I get very nervous. My hands are always sweaty beforehand. I'm like, what am I going to say? How is this going to go? So the more you can engage people, the more it feels like a conversation. That definitely helps.
Yeah. Well, you can go too far with that, you know, because I have a lawyer friend who, when he converses with you, he's asking about you. He's doing it because he's genuinely interested, but it feels like an interrogation, you know, telling him about my dating life. He's like, so Alex, now who was this gentleman you went out to dinner with last night? No, his name's John. And what does John do for a living? And it was like a series of questions, and after talking to him for like 20 minutes, and this is a really good friend of mine, I'm like, I'm exhausted. It's just tiring to, you know, that's the other side. There's always a balance.
I do that too. I'm not going to lie. Like, there's definitely, my daughter, who's 19, still gives me grief. Not that long ago, we were driving one of her friends somewhere, and she said her parents were divorced. And I was like, oh, why'd they get divorced? And later on, she's like, Dad, you can't ask my friend why her parents got divorced. And I'm like,
oops.
Fair point. Yeah.
Even though I was like, oh, you crossed the line on that one.
Yeah, totally. Sometimes you do.
Yeah. So you have a book coming out soon about Bo Jackson?
I do. I heard you're a huge Bo Jackson fan. That's why I came on this
baseball
podcast.
And football, like you're a Renaissance athlete.
He did. So he's Bo Jackson. If you don't know, won the Heisman Trophy 1985. Played Major League Baseball for the Kansas City Royals while simultaneously playing football for the Los Angeles Raiders. Had his career cut short by a devastating hip injury. He's, in my opinion, the greatest athlete to ever walk the planet. He was also an Olympic level track runner. Could pretty much do anything.
Right.
And when I was a kid, in a way, again, getting back to presentations, like I think like one of the great powers in this world that is under considered is nostalgia. And when I write books, I'm very nostalgic. Bo Jackson is very nostalgic for it. And I think the more you can elicit senses of nostalgia and warmth when you talk to people, just like when you're writing about subjects, there's a real value in it. I always say, like, food, music, sports are the three areas. Like, you smell a sauce, someone's making tomato sauce, and it reminds you of being in your grandma's kitchen.
Absolutely.
You hear a Hall & Oates song. Yeah, right. You hear a Hall & Oates song. It reminds you of being in 7th grade.
Watching you. Yeah, you don't want to hear me sing.
Right. And the same with sports. You see some video and you're like, oh, I remember, all that. So I'm really into that. Like, I'm really into nostalgia, and Bo Jackson is my nostalgia poster on my wall as a kid. Money Point.
So that's funny because I would say my nostalgia is the Cowboys, Dallas Cowboys in 1990s, because I was in my early 20s. I was living in New York. All my friends were from Texas. Every Saturday we would watch the Longhorns game, and then every Sunday we would watch the Cowboys play. And that is one of your books, Boys Will Be Boys. About
Who was your favorite Cowboy?
Well, I had a huge crush on Troy Aikman, who didn't, and I still have a little Christmas ornament with a number 8 on it,
Okay.
Troy Aikman, that I hang on my tree. And I had a plant named Emmett Smith in my house plant. So they were my 2 favorites. And
I'm going
so
to tell you, I'll give you a couple of things.
Yeah.
Number one, Emmett Smith was unhappy with the book, and when I appeared on ESPN, I actually appeared on a panel with him. And at the end, the panel wraps up. They're like, all right, we want to thank Emmett Smith. We want to thank Jeff Pearlman. And Emmett Smith goes real dismissively. He goes, keep selling those books, Jeff. Like a real, like, I was like, oh, you're not nice. And then, this was the best.
You have such a nice smile, though.
And my son's name is Emmett, not after him, but I do have a son named Emmett, actually.
Okay.
When I was reporting that book, I went to the Hall of Fame because Michael Irvin was being inducted, okay?
Yeah.
The great Michael Irvin.
Oh, yeah.
And I hadn't gotten to talk to him, but I asked him some questions at the Hall of Fame induction. And after the Hall of Fame induction happens, all the players they're all given like a tent on the property, like a big tent where they have their parties, their Hall of Fame parties. I snuck into Michael Irvin's Hall of Fame party. I literally climbed under the tent rope, snuck in to observe it all. And one of my favorite scenes in the history of my writing, and it's how I closed the book. The book opens with Michael Irvin, when he was at his crazy drugged up cocaine phase, stabbing a teammate in the neck with a pair of barber scissors during the Cowboy run. It ended with Michael Irvin on the dance floor at his Hall of Fame party with his wife. The Pointer Sisters were playing the event, and like this beautiful moment of sort of fulfillment of Michael Irvin having matured, gotten past drugs, gone past womanizing, and just this moment of him being full. And I loved it. I love breaking into parties.
Yeah, and that's actually you broke into the MTV Christmas party, right? You broke into the Hall of Fame party.
Don't get me arrested here.
Well, it might be useful now that we're out of COVID and people are having parties. Do you have any tips for our readers how to get into a good party when you haven't been invited?
Yeah, I just want to say the context of since you make me sound like I'm like, Jack the Ripper breaking parties. The
least invited person to a party.
I know. If you see Jeff Pearlman, assume he wasn't on the list.
Right.
I did a story when I was a writer at Newsday. My editor came up with the idea, just show up at office Christmas parties. So I literally was showing up at office Christmas parties, and one of them was the MTV party at the Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City. My brother-in-law, Reggie, worked at MTV. He told me there was no way I would get in. I got in. The key to breaking into a holiday party, number one is just dress nicely. Number two, if they have name tags, just take one. Like at one party, this is a long time ago, but I remember I was Mike from Datatel. I literally took a name tag that was from Mike from Datatel. And act like you know what you're doing. Like, just act like you know people and say to people, hey, good to see you. Hey, man, how's it going? Hey, haven't seen you lately. Stuff like that. It's gold. Because, you know what? I swear to God, I learned something. There are 2 guys I've watched who do this. Donald Trump, who I'm not a fan of, but whatever, and Barry Bonds, who I wrote a book about, right? Both these guys mastered something that I think is invaluable and can be, if used for good, is important, which is the power of walking like you belong. When I covered Barry Bonds, when he was with the San Francisco Giants, this shit gets you far, I promise you. I don't mean to curse. This gets you far. When I covered Barry Bonds with the Giants, he had, in the Giants clubhouse, veterans would get 2 lockers. Barry Bonds had a wall with 4 of them. The Giants had their own media staff. Barry Bonds had 2 media PR people of his own. He had his own photographer. He had his own massage therapist, all in the locker room, okay? And he did it. He got away with all this. And he had a huge flat screen TV at the base of his locker, which is preposterous.
Did he pay for it himself, or did the Giants pay for it?
No, he paid for it, but like you can't. He didn't pay for the 4 lockers though. Like that was just like, if you walk like you belong, people tend not to challenge you. It's true with Trump too. It really is true with Trump. Right. Say what you want about him. Like he's always walked like he belonged. He's always like, I'm here. I'm here. This is my space. And I think if you do that for good, which neither of those 2 guys really have done, but if you do it for good, people tend to not challenge you. It's the weirdest thing. If you can
Yeah.
fake bravado and fake a little confidence, you will get into holiday office Christmas parties quite easily. Because that's what I did. So
Well, there's a goal.
yeah, there's a goal. I'll see you at the Apple holiday party in wherever they're based, Portland.
No, that's Microsoft. Oh, no, it's
yeah,
not.
I don't know.
Microsoft. Whatever. Cool. Well, thank you for coming. So just to sum up, making a presentation, the details, go for the small details because that makes it more interesting.
Yep.
Remember that it's not about you, it's about your subject. Take the attention off of you. And to that point, engage your audience, bring them in, talk to them, compliment them, mention them, point them out as you're talking through your presentation. And most important, walk like you belong.
And always wear comfortable shoes.
And always work out. No, I can't. There's nothing nothing makes me feel more powerful than a nice pair of pumps. Not comfortable, but it's true.
I wear flip flops everywhere, and people say you're wearing flip flops, and I say yes. Everywhere, literally everywhere. You wearing flip flops? I am. I feel like I'm old enough now at 50. I can wear my flip flops and just say, "That's what I'm wearing. Deal with it."
You've earned it. You've
I've
earned
earned
your
it.
flip flops.
Exactly. Thank you.
Jeff Pearlman, thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you.